We need fresh ideas, Ethan, not old blood. Ryan Cole, my younger brother, the newly minted CEO of Cole & Company Builders, announced it at the board meeting, his gaze fixed squarely on me. I'm Ethan Cole, 45 years old, and until about 10 minutes ago, I was the senior project director at our family's construction firm here in Kansas City, Missouri. The company my grandfather started with little more than a dream, the one my father painstakingly built into a regional force, and the one I helped steer to become the third largest commercial builder across 3 states. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, leaned back, and nodded slowly. The boardroom fell into an unnerving silence. Uncle Lou suddenly found his hands fascinating. Marty from finance nervously shuffled papers. No one, except Ryan, would meet my eyes. He kept that smug little smile plastered on his face, like he was doing me some colossal favor. That's a bold move, Ryan, I said finally, my voice even. Good luck with that. Then I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked out without another word. If you've ever been blindsided by family in the cutthroat world of business, this story might just be for you. Hit that subscribe button for life stories to see how this corporate drama unfolds. They probably expected me to fight it, to yell, or make a scene in that boardroom. Maybe remind everyone that I was the one who landed the Meridian Tower project when Cole & Company Builders was still considered too small to even bid on it, or that I was the one who personally navigated us through the treacherous waters of the 2008 recession, when half our competitors went belly up. Or perhaps they thought I'd list off the top 5 clients, the ones whose CEOs I knew by their first names, the ones whose kids' graduations I attended, the ones whose loyalty was to me, not just to the company letterhead. But that would have been giving Ryan exactly what he wanted, a chance to play the calm, rational businessman against his supposedly emotional, outdated older brother. So instead, I just walked. In the parking lot, I stood next to my old pickup truck for a minute, the Kansas City skyline a muted gray under the overcast sky. 22 years. 22 years I'd poured into the family business, started hauling lumber and sweeping sites when I was just 23, fresh out of state university with a business degree that nobody in the old guard, including my own father at times, much respected. Not until I used the principles I'd learned to systematically analyze our operations, streamline bidding processes, and ultimately triple our profits within 5 years. I'd worked 6 days a week, often 7, through most of my 30s. Missed countless family vacations, missed my daughter Lily's swim meets, her school plays. Hell, I missed so much of my first marriage that it eventually disintegrated under the strain. All for Cole & Company Builders, all for the legacy. I pulled out my phone and looked at an email I'd received just yesterday. It was from Marcus Thorne, the head of Summit Developments, confirming they were officially moving forward with EC Projects, my new company, for their massive new $32 million office complex on the west side. Not Cole & Company Builders, my clients. Ryan, in his infinite wisdom and corporate maneuvering, didn't know it yet, but he had just fired the only thing keeping Cole & Company Builders truly relevant to its biggest, most profitable customers. He'd been so busy schmoozing with the bankers, impressing the new investors from that private equity firm, and strategizing with his expensive consultants, that he hadn't noticed a fundamental truth. Every major project we'd landed for the last decade, every successful completion, every repeat client, had succeeded because of the personal relationships I had painstakingly built and nurtured. And now, those relationships, that trust, that deep well of client loyalty, were coming with me. I got into my truck, the engine turning over with a familiar rumble, and drove away from the Cole & Company Builders headquarters for the very last time. As I merged onto the highway, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Something told me Ryan would be calling very, very soon. I grew up watching my father, Arthur Cole, build Cole & Company Builders from the ground up. Or rather, from the modest 2-truck operation my grandfather had started. He'd come home every evening with dirt under his fingernails, smelling of sawdust and honest sweat, but with an undeniable pride in his eyes. He'd sit at the kitchen table, tired but invigorated, telling my younger brother Ryan and me stories about pouring foundations that would last for generations, about the intricate dance of steel and concrete, about jobs won through sheer grit and jobs lost through unforeseen circumstances. Lessons learned. Always lessons learned. And he'd always end those stories the same way, his gaze sweeping over us. Someday, you boys will run this company together, side by side. Ryan is 4 years younger than me. He was always the smarter one, at least on paper. Private school, a fancy business program at Northwestern, high-powered internships with investment firms in Chicago. I, on the other hand, stayed local. Went to the state university, then straight into the family business, learning every facet from the ground up, from estimating to project management, from client negotiation to troubleshooting on-site disasters. My father never explicitly said it, but I always knew he was grooming Ryan for the corner office, for the CEO title, while I was meant to be the operational bedrock, the guy who actually knew how to build things. For years it worked. We were a good team, or so I thought. I handled the projects, the clients, the subcontractors, the gritty reality of construction. Ryan handled the money, the growth strategy, the 5-year plans, the future. The cracks started appearing about 3 years ago. Small fissures at first, easy to ignore if you weren't looking closely. Ryan began excluding me from certain meetings with the board, the ones involving the private equity investors who were starting to take an interest in us. "Just financial stuff, Ethan," he'd say with a dismissive wave of his hand. "You'd be bored to tears." Then he hired those high-priced strategy consultants from New York without even mentioning it to me beforehand. He brought in new project managers, bright young things with impressive MBAs but zero field experience, who reported directly to him, not to me, bypassing the established chain of command. Then he started going to key client meetings alone, meetings I'd always handled, meetings where the personal relationships were paramount. When I asked him about it, he'd offer some smooth explanation. "Oh, Marcus specifically requested a one-on-one to discuss financing options, Ethan. Didn't want to bother you with the details." But when I'd check in with those same clients later, like Marcus Thorne, they'd be confused. "We asked for you, Ethan. Your brother said you were too busy, tied up on other critical projects." Last year, when our father finally announced his retirement, his health failing, I already knew what was coming. The board meeting where they officially named Ryan Cole as the new CEO of Cole & Coburn Builders was just a formality. I sat there, nodding, shaking hands, playing my part as the supportive older brother. What nobody in that room knew, not even Ryan, was that I'd already seen the writing clearly on the wall. For the past 8 months, I'd been quietly, diligently building something on the side. Nothing illegal, nothing that violated my employment contract or fiduciary duties to Cole & Company Builders. Just conversations, late-night coffees, weekend lunches, discreet phone calls with our top 5 clients, cautious explorations of what might happen if, hypothetically, I ever decided to leave the family business. "You're the only reason we still work with Cole & Company, Ethan," Marcus Thorne from Summit Developments had told me bluntly over beers one rainy Tuesday night. "Their pricing isn't the best anymore, and frankly, since your brother started calling more of the shots, their internal bureaucracy has become a nightmare. If you ever go somewhere else, Ethan, we go with you. Simple as that." I'd heard variations of the same sentiment from all the others. Tanner from Riverbend Group, Sophia from Apex Commercial, James from Westfield Properties, Victor from Union Square Holdings. Together, these 5 clients represented over 60% of Cole & Company Builders' annual revenue, the profitable cream of our project portfolio. I filed the LLC paperwork for EC projects 6 months ago, secured a modest line of credit from a small local bank that valued personal relationships over corporate spreadsheets, found a small, unassuming office space on the west side of Kansas City, started discreetly talking to some of Cole & Company's best foremen and project managers, the ones who were also growing disillusioned with Ryan's increasingly arrogant management style. I wasn't stealing anything. I was preparing. There's a world of difference. Ryan, so focused on the glittering prize of becoming CEO, so enamored with his own perceived brilliance, never once noticed that the very foundation he was about to inherit was quietly, systematically crumbling beneath his feet. The morning after Ryan had so unceremoniously declared my obsolescence, I drove not to the familiar, imposing headquarters of Cole & Company Builders, but to the small, unpretentious office I'd rented on the west side of Kansas City. It wasn't much, a modest reception area and 2 private offices above a quiet accountant's practice, but it was mine. The sign on the door still bore the previous tenant's name. I hadn't bothered changing it yet. Discretion had been paramount. I'd barely settled in with a cup of coffee. The preliminary blueprints for the Summit Development's office complex spread across my rented desk when my phone rang, caller ID, Ryan Cole. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, almost immediately, and then again. Finally, with a sigh, I answered, "Ethan, what in the hell is going on?" Ryan's voice was high-pitched, almost hysterical, that specific tone it always got when he was panicking, when his carefully constructed world wasn't going according to plan. "Marcus Thorne from Summit just called me, screaming. He said Summit is pulling all their current and future projects from us, effective immediately. Says they've already signed with someone else, someone called EC Projects." "Sounds like you've got a problem, Ryan," I said calmly, taking a sip of my coffee. "Did you do this? Is this you? Is EC Projects your company?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "I'm just a builder, Ryan, looking to build things. I secured my future, just like you secured yours yesterday in that boardroom." He was quiet for a moment, the gears in his Ivy League brain almost audibly whirring. Then, sputtering, But these are Cole & Co. Builders' clients. They belong to the company. This is theft. It's unethical." "No, Ryan," I corrected him, my voice still even. "They were my clients. I built those relationships over years, sometimes decades. I earned their trust, project by project, handshake by handshake. You thought you were just firing a senior project director yesterday, but you were actually firing the only person those clients, your most important clients, actually wanted to work with, the only person they truly trusted to deliver." "This isn't legal," he insisted, his panic escalating. "We'll sue you. We'll sue EC Projects into oblivion." "Go ahead, Ryan," I invited. "My lawyer assures me I've done absolutely nothing wrong. I didn't solicit a single client while I was still employed by Cole & Co. I didn't take any proprietary information, no client lists, no trade secrets, not that you'd know what a trade secret in actual construction looks like. And I certainly didn't violate any non-compete agreement, because, if you recall, I was never asked to sign one. Your oversight, I believe. I'm just a builder, Ryan, who's now building somewhere else. And my clients, the ones who value experience and integrity, are choosing to follow me." Another long, charged pause. I could almost hear him mentally calculating the financial impact, the sheer magnitude of the contracts that had just walked out the door with me. The dawning realization of just how badly he'd misjudged the situation, how catastrophically he'd overplayed his hand. "Ethan, come on," he finally said, his voice shifting, attempting a placating tone. "We're brothers. We can work this out. There must be a way." That's when something inside me, something that had been tightly coiled for years, finally snapped. Not anger, not anymore. Something colder, something much more final. "We were brothers yesterday too, Ryan," I said, my voice like ice. "That didn't stop you from publicly humiliating me, from trying to discard me like a broken tool in front of the entire board, in front of Uncle Lou. That was just business, Ethan. It wasn't personal," he protested, the desperation now clear. I almost laughed, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance of that statement. "The family name, our family name, is on the damn building, Ryan. It's on every truck, every piece of equipment. It's all personal. It always has been." "Look," he said quickly, I made a mistake, okay? I admit it. I misjudged. Just come back. We'll figure it out, together, like Dad always wanted." I looked down at my desk, at the meticulously detailed preliminary plans for the Summit Development's office complex. My project now. My company. My future. No, Ryan, I said simply, firmly. I'm good right where I am. Ethan, you don't understand. His voice was rising again, the panic returning full force. It's not just Summit. Riverbend Group called too. And Apex Commercial. They're all saying the same thing. They're following you. Now I did laugh, a short, humorless sound. Oh, I understand perfectly, Ryan. You're not calling because you suddenly regret your actions. You're not calling because you've had some brotherly epiphany. You're calling because you're in serious trouble and you think I can bail you out. Not because you want me back. There's a very big difference. Dad's going to be furious when he hears about this, Ryan threatened, playing what he probably thought was his trump card. That stung, more than I wanted to admit. But I pushed past it. He wanted us to run the company together, Ryan. That was always his dream. You made the choice to end that dream, not me. Your ambition, your arrogance, that's what's going to make him furious. The silence on the other end of the line stretched out, thick and heavy. When Ryan finally spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller. Defeated. What do you want, Ethan? Money? A bigger stake? A board seat? Just name it. We can make it happen. I don't want anything from you, Ryan, I said, the weariness settling deep in my bones. I've already got what I need. My clients, my reputation, my freedom. But Ethan, these clients, they represent over 60% of our annual revenue. The bank will call our loans if we lose them all at once. We'll be ruined. Like I said, Ryan, I answered, my voice devoid of any sympathy now. Sounds like you've got a problem. Then I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time afterward, staring at the silent receiver, the Kansas City rain still drumming softly against the window pane. I didn't feel the elation, the triumph I might have expected. Just a hollow sort of finality. The last tie cut. The last bridge burned. I was completely, utterly on my own now, and strangely, terrifyingly, it felt right. 3 days after I walked out of Cole & Cody Builders, and 2 days after that enlightening phone call with Ryan, Uncle Lou showed up at my temporary EC Projects office. He'd been Dad's right-hand man for 30 years, a steady, loyal presence through thick and thin, before semi-retiring to a comfortable board position a few years back. He found me hunched over a stack of resumes, trying to recruit experienced project managers and foremen, the lifeblood of any successful construction outfit. "Nice place, Ethan," he said, his gaze sweeping around the bare walls and rented furniture, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Very startup." "It's temporary, Uncle Lou," I said, not bothering to get up. I gestured to the only other chair in the small office. "What do you want?" He sighed, a heavy, weary sound, and sat down across from me. "The board called an emergency meeting yesterday morning, Ethan. Ryan told us what you did." "What I did?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's an interesting way to frame it, Uncle Lou." "He says you stole our biggest clients," Uncle Lou continued, his voice carefully neutral. "Says you've been planning this betrayal for months, undermining the company from within." I put down the resume I'd been reading. The accusations were predictable, but hearing them relayed by Uncle Lou, a man I'd always respected, still stung. I built deep personal relationships with those clients over many years, Uncle Lou. I delivered their projects on time, consistently under budget. I earned their loyalty, their trust. Ryan fired me, unceremoniously, in front of everyone. They chose to follow me. End of story. Uncle Lou leaned forward, his expression serious. "The board is talking about suing you, Ethan. They're very serious. They feel you've breached your fiduciary duty, that you've acted in bad faith." "Let them," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "My lawyer, Sarah, says I'm clean. I have every right to start my own business and to work with clients who choose to work with me." "This isn't just about what's legal, Ethan," Uncle Lou pressed, his gaze unwavering. "It's about what's right. Your father, Arthur, He built that company for both of you. He envisioned you and Ryan carrying it forward together, building on his legacy. That landed harder than I wanted to admit. Dad's disappointment was a heavy weight. Dad wanted us to run it together, yes, I conceded. Ryan made a different choice. A very public, very deliberate choice. He made a mistake, Ethan. A terrible mistake. He admits that now. Uncle Lou, a mistake is forgetting someone's birthday or miscalculating a bid by a few $1,000s. What Ryan did, he ambushed me in a board meeting after months of systematically pushing me out, marginalizing my role, treating me like I was irrelevant. That wasn't a mistake. That was a strategy. Uncle Lou rubbed his weathered face, the lines around his eyes seeming deeper today. The company's in trouble, Ethan. Real serious trouble. The bank is getting very nervous about our financing, about our line of credit, now that those big projects, the ones with Summit and Riverbend and Apex, are off the books. I know exactly what financial position the company's in, Uncle Lou, I said quietly. I ran the operations division for 15 years. I know where every dollar was allocated, every loan was secured. Then you know this could tank the whole thing, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Everything your father built, everything you helped build, gone. I felt a twinge of doubt then, the first crack in my resolve. I had wanted to build my own future, yes, but I had never intended to destroy my family's past in the process. What exactly are you asking me to do, Uncle Lou? I asked, the fight draining out of me. Come back, Ethan. Bring the clients back with you. We can restructure the leadership, co-CEOs maybe. You and Ryan as equals, like your father always wanted. For a brief, flickering moment, I actually considered it. The thought of salvaging Cole & Kodu builders, of honoring my father's dream, was a powerful pull. Then I remembered Ryan's face when he'd fired me, that smug, self-satisfied smirk, the chilling satisfaction in his eyes. No, Uncle Lou, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. That won't work. It can't work. Not anymore. Uncle Lou stood up abruptly, his face flushed with a sudden, surprising anger. Damn it, Ethan. This is your family. This is your legacy, too. Ryan should have thought about that before he publicly executed me in that boardroom, I shot back, my own anger flaring. Your father is devastated by all this, Ethan. He's talking about coming out of retirement, trying to fix this mess himself. Another twist of the knife. Dad was 72. He had heart problems. His doctors had explicitly ordered him to take it easy, to avoid stress. The thought of him stepping back into the high-pressure world of construction, trying to salvage the company Ryan had nearly destroyed, was unbearable. Tell Dad to stay home, Uncle Lou, I said, my voice thick with emotion. This isn't his problem to fix. He's done enough. Uncle Lou headed for the door, then turned back, his shoulders slumped, the anger gone, replaced by a deep sadness. The board meeting is tomorrow at noon, Ethan. They're voting on whether to proceed with the lawsuit against you. And one more thing. He hesitated, then continued, his voice heavy. Ryan has been calling all your usual subcontractors, the electricians, the plumbers, the HVAC guys you've worked with for years. He's telling them that anyone who works with you with EC projects will be blacklisted from all future Cole & Kodu builders projects, permanently. After Uncle Lou left, I sat there for a long time, feeling the walls of my small office closing in around me. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Panicked calls from electricians, plumbers, drywall crews, the skilled tradespeople I'd been counting on, the ones whose reliability and craftsmanship were essential to delivering the quality I'd promised my clients. They couldn't afford to lose Cole & Kodu's substantial business, they explained, their voices apologetic but firm. They were sorry, truly sorry, but they had to pull out of their commitments to EC projects. I'd expected Ryan to fight back, to try and negotiate, to maybe even get nasty. But not like this. This was scorched earth. He was trying to cut me off at the knees, to ensure EC projects died before it even had a chance to live. Without reliable, quality subcontractors, I couldn't deliver on the promises I'd made to Marcus Thorne, to Tanner, to Sophia, and the others. By evening, I'd lost commitments from nearly every specialty contractor I needed. My carefully laid plans, my meticulously crafted projections, were unraveling before my eyes. I was going to have to find new subcontractors, possibly from outside the Kansas City area, at much higher costs, with uncertain quality. Costs that would eat up most, if not all, of my projected profits on these initial critical projects. Ryan hadn't just pushed back. He'd found my single greatest vulnerability, my reliance on the local network of trades I'd cultivated over 2 decades, and he'd exploited it perfectly, ruthlessly. He wasn't just trying to save Cole and Coney Builders anymore. He was actively trying to destroy EC Projects before it could even pour its first foundation. And I had to admit, with a sickening lurch in my stomach, he was doing a damn good job of it. The next morning, instead of heading to my beleaguered EC Projects office, I drove out to see my father. I hadn't been to my parents' house, the house I grew up in, since all this chaos with Ryan and the company began. Their place sat on 5 acres of rolling land just outside Kansas City, the first real, substantial purchase Dad made when Cole and Company Builders started taking off back in the late 80s. He'd always said a man in the construction business should have land, a place where he can see the horizon, feel the earth beneath his feet. Mom answered the door, her face etched with worry. But she hugged me hard, a fierce, protective embrace that spoke volumes. She led me through to the familiar, sun-drenched back porch where Dad was sitting in his old wicker chair, looking out over the sprawling property, a cup of coffee growing cold beside him. "Ethan," he said, his voice gravelly, not turning around as I approached. He sounded older than I remembered, wearier. "Dad." I sat down in the matching wicker chair next to him. For a while, we just sat there in a heavy, uncomfortable silence, the only sound the distant drone of a lawnmower from a neighboring property. Finally, he spoke, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. "Your brother tells me you're trying to sink the company, Ethan." "That's not what I'm doing, Dad," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Then what would you call it, son?" he asked, his tone laced with a deep, undeniable pain. I measured my words carefully, needing him to understand, needing to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. "I'm building something of my own, Dad. Something new. After Ryan pushed me out." Dad finally turned to look at me then, his eyes, usually so sharp and full of life, now clouded with a mixture of confusion and sorrow. "You couldn't work it out, Ethan. You two were supposed to carry this company forward, together. That was always my dream for Cole & Co., for this family." "You need to tell that to Ryan, Dad," I said, a touch of my own frustration creeping in. "He's the one who ambushed me, who fired me in front of the entire board without so much as a warning. And now you're taking our biggest, most important clients with you," he countered, his voice heavy with accusation. "They chose to come with me, Dad," I insisted. "I didn't steal anything. They value the relationships we built, the work I did for them." Dad sighed heavily, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "The situation, it's worse than you know, son. Much worse." Something in his tone, a note of raw despair I'd never heard from him before, made me pay closer attention. "What do you mean, Dad? Worse how?" He looked out toward the distant horizon again, as if searching for answers in the vast Missouri sky. "The company, Cole & Company Builders, it's not as solid as everyone thinks. Not as solid as Ryan led the board, or even me to believe." "What are you talking about?" I asked, a sense of unease beginning to creep over me. "The last few years, since I stepped back, since Ryan really took the reins, we've been overextended, dangerously overextended." "Overextended how?" I pressed. "We've been profitable every quarter, Dad. The numbers looked good." "On paper, sure," he conceded with a grimace. "But Ryan has been borrowing a lot, Ethan. Borrowing heavily, using future projects, future revenues, as collateral for those loans." He paused, then delivered the blow. "Those 5 big clients you took with you, Summit Developments, Riverbend, Apex, their projects, the ones you were managing, Their projected revenues were already factored into those loans. They were the collateral. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How much are we talking about, Dad? How much debt? Enough, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Enough that without those specific projects on the books, without that guaranteed revenue stream, the bank might call everything due. They could pull our entire line of credit. Why would he do that? I was stunned. We've always been so conservative with debt. You taught us that, Dad. Build on a solid foundation, never overreach. Dad's face clouded over, a look of profound disappointment settling in his eyes. He had ideas, Ethan. Grandiose expansion plans, new markets, new ventures, bigger headquarters. He convinced the board, and himself, I suppose, that it was the future of Cole & Coney Builders, the only way to compete with the national firms. He paused, then added, his voice filled with self-reproach. I should have paid closer attention before I fully retired. I should have seen the warning signs. The pieces were starting to fit together now, forming a disturbing, almost unbelievable picture. Ryan's strange, secretive behavior over the past year. The new, expensive consultants he'd brought in. The private meetings with bankers and investors that I'd been excluded from. He hadn't just been planning to edge me out of the company. He'd been leveraging Cole & Coney Builders to the absolute hilt, gambling its future on his ambitious, untested vision. And now, those loans, those massive financial obligations, were in jeopardy because I'd inadvertently taken the very clients, the very projects, those loans were based on. Why are you telling me all this now, Dad? I asked, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Because you need to understand what's really at stake here, Ethan. It's not just your brother's pride, or your hurt feelings, or even the future of my legacy. If Cole & Coney Builders goes under, a lot of good, hard-working people get hurt. Our employees, their families, our loyal suppliers, the ones who've stood by us for decades. And yes, he added, his voice cracking slightly, your mother and me, for that matter, our retirement, our security, it's all tied up in that company. I felt the full, crushing weight of it then, the unintended consequences of my actions, of Ryan's recklessness. What about the lawsuit? I asked, remembering Uncle Lou's visit. Uncle Lou said the board is voting today. They are, Dad confirmed. Ryan is pushing hard for it. He thinks suing you, forcing those clients back, is the only way to save the company now. And you, Dad? I looked him straight in the eye. What do you think they should do? My father turned to me then, his eyes tired, ancient, but filled with a deep paternal sorrow. Ethan, he said, his voice heavy, I think a lawsuit now. A lawsuit would just finish off whatever's left of this family, whatever's left of Cole & Coney Builders. As I drove back to my small, struggling EC Projects office, my mind was racing. I'd been so focused on Ryan's betrayal, on the injustice of my ousting, that I hadn't seen the bigger, more dangerous picture. He hadn't fired me simply because he wanted all the glory for himself, or because he thought my ideas were old blood. He'd fired me because I was the cautious one, the pragmatic one, the one who would have questioned his risky, debt-fueled expansion plans, the one who would have hit the brakes. My leaving with those key clients wasn't just embarrassing him publicly, it was exposing the fragile house of cards he'd secretly, recklessly built. No wonder he was fighting so dirty, trying to destroy EC projects before it even got off the ground. His entire empire, his entire future, depended on it. The question now, the one that gnawed at my conscience, was what was I going to do about it? I'd wanted justice, not destruction. I'd wanted to build something of my own, on my own terms, not tear down everything my father and grandfather had worked their entire lives to create. But Ryan, in his ambition and his arrogance, had put us all in an impossible, untenable position. By the time I reached my office, the decision had begun to form in my mind, a difficult, unpalatable, but perhaps necessary path. I needed to find a third way, a way that protected my new company, EC Projects, without completely destroying Cole & Coney Builders, without destroying my family. I canceled all my meetings for the rest of that afternoon. My mind was a whirlwind, but a single, clear path was beginning to emerge from the chaos. My first call was to Marcus Thorne at Summit Developments. "Marcus," I said when he picked up, "I need a favor. A big one." "Ethan," he replied, his voice warm. "After all the times you've pulled our projects back from the brink of disaster, after all the fires you've put out for us over the years, you just name it. I need you to meet with Ryan Cole, my brother," I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. "Hear him out. Maybe even consider splitting your upcoming office complex project, some of it with EC projects, some of it with Cole & Company Builders." There was a stunned pause on the other end of the line. "Ethan, are you serious? You're asking me to give business back to the company that just unceremoniously fired you? The one whose CEO, your brother, is currently threatening to sue you into oblivion and trying to sabotage your new venture by threatening subcontractors?" "It's complicated, Marcus," I said, the understatement of the year. "Family usually is." "That's asking a hell of a lot, Ethan," he said, his skepticism evident. "I know it is," I replied, "but I'm asking anyway, for reasons bigger than just business." After Marcus, with considerable reluctance, agreed to at least consider a meeting, I made similar, equally difficult calls to my other 4 major clients. Each conversation was a struggle. They were confused, some even angry. They'd chosen to follow me, to place their trust in EC projects, and now I was seemingly sending mixed, contradictory signals. But eventually, out of respect for our past relationships, out of a loyalty I was now leveraging in a way I never thought I would, they all agreed to at least meet with Ryan, to hear what Cole & Company Builders might have to offer. Next, I called my lawyer, Sarah. "I need you to draft a proposal, Sarah," I told her. "A strategic partnership agreement, and I need it by morning." Finally, with a deep breath, I called Ryan directly. "I'm surprised you picked up," I said when he answered, his voice guarded. "I've been trying to reach you for days, Ethan," he said, his tone strained, weary. "I know about the loans, Ryan." I cut straight to the chase. "Dad told me everything." A long, heavy silence, then defeated. "So now you understand. Now you understand why this is so serious." "I do," I said. "And I have a proposal. Meet me tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. My office." "Why would I do that, Ethan? After everything?" "Because," I interrupted, "I've already spoken to all 5 major clients: Marcus Thorne, Tanner, Sophia, James, and Victor. I've asked them to reconsider working with Cole & Company Builders, at least in some capacity. They've all agreed to meet with you, to hear you out." Another pause, this one filled with disbelief. "What's the catch, Ethan?" "No catch," I said. "Just be there." I hung up before he could ask any more questions. That night I barely slept. I kept going over the plan in my head, looking for flaws, for ways it could backfire spectacularly. By morning, my eyes were burning with exhaustion, but my mind was unexpectedly clear. Ryan arrived at my office exactly at 7, looking like he hadn't slept either. He was wearing one of his expensive, tailored suits, but his eyes were bloodshot, his usual arrogant confidence completely gone. "Sit down, Ryan," I said, gesturing to the single chair across from my rented desk. He hesitated, then sat. "Why are you doing this, Ethan?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why offer to help now, after what I did to you?" "I'm not doing it for you, Ryan," I told him honestly. "I'm doing it for Dad, for Mom, for Uncle Lou, for the dozens of loyal employees at Cole & Company whose livelihoods are at stake, for the family name on that building." He finally sat. "So what's this proposal?" I slid a single document across the desk. "EC Projects and Cole & Company Builders will enter into a formal strategic partnership," I explained. "We divide the 5 major clients, the ones whose projects were collateral for your loans, between us. 3 for Cole & Co., 2 for EC Projects. That should be enough to satisfy the bank, keep them from calling in your loans, while still giving me enough solid work to build EC projects on." He skimmed the document, his brow furrowed in concentration. This says I have to step down as CEO of Cole & Company Builders." It does, I confirmed. Dad comes back, temporarily, as interim CEO, while the board conducts a proper search for a new, qualified, neutral CEO from outside the family, someone with real construction experience. And what about my expansion plans? He asked, a flicker of his old ambition returning. Put on hold, I said firmly. Indefinitely. Cole & Comey needs to get its financial house in order, deleverage, and focus on its core competencies before even thinking about aggressive expansion. Ryan leaned back, studying me, his expression unreadable. So, you get your revenge after all, Ethan. You get to see me humiliated, pushed out. This isn't about revenge, Ryan, I said, though a small part of me couldn't deny a certain grim satisfaction. This is about saving what's worth saving and letting go of the rest. It's about responsibility. And if I refuse, he challenged, a hint of his old defiance returning, then I keep all 5 clients, as is my right, I stated calmly. You default on your loans, and Cole & Comey Builders, the company Dad and Granddad built, likely doesn't survive the year. Your choice, Ryan. He stared at the document for a long, agonizing time. I could almost see him calculating, weighing his options, desperately looking for another way out. The Ryan Cole I knew, the one who had fired me with such a smug smirk, would never have accepted these terms. But the Ryan sitting across from me now wasn't that same man. This one looked beaten, cornered, finally understanding the precipice he stood upon. The board won't like this, he said finally, his voice flat. The board will like bankruptcy even less, Ryan, I countered. He picked up a pen, hesitated for a long moment, then, with a deep, shuddering sigh, signed the document. As he stood to leave, he looked at me directly, his eyes for the first time showing a flicker of something other than panic or resentment. Maybe it was shame. I really thought I was doing the right thing. You know, Ethan, he said, his voice barely audible. For the company, for the future. I didn't answer. Some things I was learning don't deserve a response. After he left, I called Dad to tell him what had happened, to ask him if he was truly willing to step back in temporarily. He agreed without hesitation. Then I called the clients, one by one, to let them know about the new arrangement. By noon, it was done. Not the outcome I had ever planned for. Not a clean, triumphant victory for EC projects, but something sustainable, something that could work. Sometimes, in family and in business, that's the best you can hope for. 6 months later, I stood on the bustling construction site of the Summit Development's office complex, the flagship project for EC projects. The steel framework was rising impressively against the Kansas City skyline. Concrete floors were already poured for the first 3 levels. My project, my company. Across town, Cole & Comey Builders was still standing. Dad had come back, just as he'd promised, for a few crucial months, long enough to stabilize the ship, reassure the bank, and calm the employees. The new CEO, Diane Rourke, a no-nonsense woman with 30 years of construction management experience under her belt, was slowly, methodically rebuilding the company's reputation and its financial footing. Ryan had left Missouri altogether. He'd taken a job with a smaller development firm out in Denver. We hadn't spoken directly since the day he signed my proposal in that rented office. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Marcus Thorne approaching, hard hat in hand, a satisfied grin on his face. "Looking good, Ethan," he said, surveying the impressive progress. "On schedule?" 2 weeks ahead, actually, Marcus, I replied, unable to suppress my own grin. He nodded approvingly. "Not surprised. That's why we followed you, Ethan. You deliver." He hesitated for a moment. "You know, your brother, Ryan, he called me last week. That caught me off guard." "Ryan? What did he want?" "To apologize, actually," Marcus said. "Said he'd made a huge mistake letting you go. Said you were the one who really understood what made Cole & Comey work, what made it special." I didn't know what to say to that. "He also mentioned he's starting something new out in Denver," Marcus continued. "Asked if I had any contacts out that way who might be looking for a sharp finance guy." And do you? I asked. Marcus shrugged. A few. I gave him some names. He looked at me carefully then. That okay with you, Ethan? I thought about it for a long moment, the Kansas City wind whipping around us, Ryan starting over, trying to build something new, just like I was. Yeah, I said finally. Yeah, Marcus, that's okay with me. We walked the site together, discussing timelines and material deliveries, the normal, everyday talk of construction. But my mind kept drifting back to Ryan, to his unexpected apology, to the fact that he was out there, trying again. Maybe that was the Cole way, after all. Not tearing each other down, but building, creating, trying to make something solid, something that would last. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, not yet. But it felt like a start. 1 year to the day after I was so unceremoniously fired, I parked my truck outside the Cole & Company Builders headquarters. I hadn't been back, hadn't set foot inside, since I walked out of that fateful board meeting. The building looked the same, familiar, yet different somehow. The company wasn't the same. They'd downsized significantly, refocused on smaller, more manageable projects. No more grandiose, debt-fueled expansion plans. Dad was fully retired again, truly retired this time, spending his days fishing and spoiling his grandkids. The new CEO, Diane, was making steady, solid progress, rebuilding what Ryan had so nearly destroyed. I'd kept my end of our agreement. EC Projects had stayed focused on our 2 major initial clients, not actively poaching any more business from Cole & Co. We'd grown, yes, but carefully, sustainably. We now had 38 employees and a burgeoning reputation for quality work and innovative solutions. I wasn't there for a meeting or a contract negotiation or any kind of business. I was there because Dad had called and asked me to come. Said there was something he wanted me to see. Inside, a few familiar faces nodded at me, some looking surprised, others offering tentative smiles. I took the elevator up to the executive floor. Dad was waiting for me in the main conference room, the very same room where Ryan had fired me. But the room had changed. The pretentious, modern artwork Ryan had installed was gone, replaced by large, beautifully framed photographs of Cole & Company Builders projects over the decades, a testament to the company's long and storied history. And there, on the main wall behind the head of the massive conference table, were 3 striking photographs, each one larger than the rest. My grandfather, standing proudly with his first 2 beat-up construction trucks, a look of fierce determination in his young eyes. My father, shovel in hand, breaking ground on their first major commercial project back in 1988. And me, 10 years ago, shaking hands with the mayor of Kansas City after completing the Meridian Tower project ahead of schedule and under budget, a landmark achievement for our company. Diane's idea, Dad said quietly, watching me take it all in. She said we needed to remember our foundations, Ethan. Where we came from. What really matters. I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak, a lump forming in my throat. You built a good company, son, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion, his hand resting on my shoulder. Your own thing. EC Projects. I'm incredibly proud of you, Ethan. Thanks, Dad, I managed, my own eyes unexpectedly moist. We didn't talk about Ryan. We didn't need to. Some things break and can't ever be truly fixed, not back to the way they were. But that doesn't mean you can't build something new, something strong, something worthwhile, from the pieces that remain. I walked out of Cole & Company Builders for the 2nd time in my life. But this time, I walked out with my head held high, a sense of peace settling over me. This time, I walked out a builder, in every sense of the word. Thank you for journeying with Ethan Cole through the challenges of family business, betrayal, and ultimately rebuilding. If his story of resilience and finding a new path resonated with you, please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We truly appreciate hearing from our community. And don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories 1 and click the notification bell so you're always updated with our latest inspiring narratives. Your support helps us continue to share these powerful stories.